Chapter 92 The victory has been determined. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The last general sent out more than 200 spies to investigate all around the battlefield. It is true that there is no Qin Xuanshan's 60 troops. General Jinan said with a complicated expression. Now, not only Qin Jianyan, but all the generals and important ministers were shocked, don't understand what's going on here. Qin Xuanshan clearly led an army of 60, why didn't any of them rush here? Your Majesty, in any case, this is good news for us. An important minister was the first to react, and said solemnly, we should take this opportunity to completely wipe out this rebel army. As long as there is no Qin Xuanshan's 60 troops, it will not be difficult for them to defeat the Zhenbei army led by Li Fengqi. Rational. Qin Jianyan nodded when he heard the words, and then ordered, attack with all your strength and defeat the rebels in one fell swoop. He didn't want to destroy it, he just wanted to defeat it and take it prisoner. Although these soldiers followed the rebellion, although they were not completely innocent, cultivating these hundreds of thousands of soldiers consumed the huge national power of the dynasty and could not afford such consumption. As ordered, General Jinan and several generals respectfully agreed. They left here one after another to command the battle. Only Qin Zining stood by Qin Jianyan's side to prevent dangerous people from approaching. Soldiers, the enemy has no reinforcements. Kill me. The roaring voices of many generals resounded in the battlefield. If they said so before, these soldiers may not believe it, but now that Qin Xuanshan has taken action against Li Fengqi, there is nothing these soldiers can't believe. Kill. For a time, a more intense battle broke out. After such a long battle, the Zhenbei army had already suffered heavy losses, and took Qin Xuanshan's 60 troops as the last straw. Seeing that Qin Xuanshan not only failed to bring 60 troops, but also attacked Li Fengqi, their morale fell to the bottom in an instant. Facing the counterattack commanded by General Jinan, the army was defeated in an instant. The battle situation turned into a one-sided crush. In less than half an hour, the battle was completely over. The battlefield is full of soldiers of the Zhenbei army who put down their weapons, put their heads in their hands, kneeled on the ground and surrendered. Some of them escaped from the battlefield, but they were already chased by the cavalry sent by General Jinan. Boom! The Zhenbei army below was defeated, and Li Fengqi and others in the sky were also not feeling well. After the battle formation collapsed, the few of them without special protection were completely vulnerable in front of Chen Lao and others who didn't have to worry about the battlefield below. It didn't take long for all of them to be seriously injured. They all fell to the ground one by one, smashing a big hole in the hard ground. Bastard! Qin Xuanshan, you must die. Li Fengqi, who was seriously injured and suppressed, roared angrily. In any case, he didn't understand why Qin Xuanshan suddenly changed his mind. Obviously uniting with him can defeat Qin Jianyan and seize the throne, but instead he wants to help Qin Jianyan. Destroy all of them and take them down, and prepare to escort them to the imperial city. General Jinan looked at Li Fengqi and the others who were unwilling to howl, and said coldly. Several lieutenants heard the words, and immediately stepped forward, abolished Li Fengqi and others' cultivation bases, then tied them up with chains, and escorted them away. What awaits Li Fengqi and the others will be a joint trial by the 3 divisions and a dark prison. After the war, in a dark forest, Qin Feng, who was sitting cross-legged, also opened his eyes. It's the first time to use the corpse control technique. Although it can't bring out the fighting power of these corpses, it's not bad overall. He muttered to himself, the corpse control technique requires extremely high spiritual awareness. Normal corpse exorcising disciples need decades of trying to control the corpse, but for Qin Feng, it was easy. It took just over 3 hours. It's a pity that these corpses are too weak, and it's not worth my trouble to continue refining. After being satisfied, Qin Feng said with a little disappointment, after all, this is his first time. He originally wanted to keep these corpses and keep refining them to strengthen them, but Qin Xuanshan and the others are really not strong, so it is not worth his effort. Shaking his head, Qin Feng decided not to want those corpses anymore. He didn't stay here any longer, got up and left. On the bloody battlefield, Qin Jianyan looked at the victorious army with mixed feelings for a moment. In just a few days, he experienced the interweaving of despair and hope several times, as if wandering between heaven and hell, and the pressure in his heart was also very great. now the victory is finally decided. Father, are you alright? Seeing Qin Jianyan's abnormal expression, Qin Zining quickly asked, do you want me to call the Imperial doctor for you? No, King Jin and the others are all injured, let the Imperial doctor check them out. Looking at Jin Wang, Qin Shenzhan and the others standing in the void covered in blood, Qin Jianyan said in a deep voice, although he didn't know why Qin Shenzhan wanted to help him, he felt that the most urgent thing now was to get someone to heal Qin Xuanshan's injuries to prevent them from getting worse. When the other people heard the words, their eyes also fell on the figures of Qin Shenzhan and others in the sky. All of them had complicated expressions, and they really didn't understand what Qin Shenzhan and the others were thinking. Plop, plop. However, at this moment, Qin Shenzhan and the others fell from the sky and landed on the ground as if they were suddenly unconscious. What happened? Seeing this scene, Qin Jianyan and the others were all surprised. They all stepped forward quickly. However, when they saw Qin Shenzhan and the others at close range, their faces changed. All of them have no breath and are dead. General Zhenan said in amazement. How could this be? Weren't they all fine just now? Why did they all die suddenly? Qin Jianyan looked incredible. Even if these people were seriously injured in the previous battle, they shouldn't all die all at once. And died so suddenly, as if agreed. At this time, the Imperial doctor had rushed over to examine the bodies of Qin Shenzhan and several other feudal lords. Your Majesty, these people have been dead for at least 3 hours. After a while, the Imperial doctor's eyes were full of shock and disbelief. He also saw clearly the battle between Qin Shenzhan and Li Fengqi just now. How come Qin Shenzhan has been dead for more than 3 hours now? What? Has been dead for more than 3 hours? Qin Jianyan was dumbfounded. Not only him, but many other generals and several important ministers were all stupid by themselves. The person who died 3 hours ago actually fought Li Fengqi in front of them just now. What a joke! Chapter 93: The Identity of the Mysterious Powerhouse. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Your Majesty, it is true that he died 3 hours ago. After the Imperial doctor paused, he said solemnly, I suspect that they are corpses manipulated by the exorcism sect. As soon as he said this, the faces of the people present changed again. Everyone looked at each other, thinking that if Qin Shenzhan and the others were really dead for 3 hours, that was the only possibility. Could it be that the exorcists are helping us? Qin Jianyan frowned, and said, impossible. The corpse exorcist sect is a feud with us, and they have already been exterminated. How could someone suddenly help us? The others also frowned, feeling that it was really impossible. Their blood feud with the exorcist sect is deeper than that with the demons. After all, it was a matter of several great dynasties working together to exterminate the evil spirits, and it was the great Xia dynasty's own efforts to injure the once most glorious exorcism faction. And at this moment, soldiers with the appearance of spies came across the battlefield in a hurry. Your Majesty, we have found Qin Xuanshan's 60 troops. The spy knelt on one knee, with an unconcealable shock on his face. Found it? Where? But when Qin Jianyan heard the words, he immediately asked, why didn't they come here with Qin Shenzhan? The 60 troops have all been defeated. The spy said slowly, in just one sentence, like a thunderbolt from the clear sky. Everyone present was stunned. They wondered if their ears had heard it wrong. That 60 troops, not 60 pigs. It was the painstaking efforts of several feudal lords for countless years. Even Mr. Chen and the others could hardly retreat from these large armies. Now the spies say that the 60 army has been defeated. How could they not be shocked? What nonsense are you talking about? General Zhenan shouted coldly, and said, that is an army of 60, except for the army we lead. There is no other army in the entire great Xia dynasty that can fight against it. How could it be defeated inexplicably? If these spies were not trained by him himself, he must doubt whether these spies are spies. General, my subordinates absolutely dare not talk nonsense. The spy said helplessly and bitterly, the 60 army was defeated more than 3 hours ago, and it wasn't any army that defeated them, but one person. From the mouth of the defeated soldier, he already understood the general process of the matter. One person. General Zhenan was startled, then frowned even tighter, and asked, what's going on here? that the spy didn't hide anything, and immediately reported all the information he learned from the defeated 60 army. After hearing his words, Qin Zhonyan and many important officials and generals were all shocked for a while. One person, one sword, defeated an army of 60, that they were all amazed. It's hard to imagine what a terrible scene it was. He even suspected that the spy was lying. After all, that was a full 60 army, and with the blessing of the battle formation, how could it be easily defeated by one person? Go and see. Qin Zhonyan said in a deep voice. Seeing is believing. Afterwards, Qin Zhonyan let the spies lead the way, and flew towards the direction where the 60 army was defeated. Among the 60 troops at this time, except for those generals, not many escaped, and most of them were meditating to heal their injuries, waiting for the imperial army to come. These soldiers knew in their hearts that if they surrendered obediently, although Qin Zhonyan would punish them, at least he would not kill them all, and if they escape at this time and are captured, they will definitely die. Not long after, Qin Zhonyan and the others arrived here. Hiss. Seeing the 60 army in disarray, the destroyed battle formation, many generals and ministers, they couldn't help but gasped. This scene is really shocking. There is a very powerful sword intent remaining between the heavens and the earth. Old Chen said solemnly, very familiar. I feel like the strong swordsman who has helped us several times. It started when the old eunuch was killed. He has been in contact with Qin Feng's residual sword intent several times, and he is so familiar with it that he sensed it immediately. It's hard to defeat 60 troops with a single strike, even for a 5th-level powerhouse in the Purple Mansion realm. The general of Zhenan looked dignified, and said doubtfully, it feels like at least a strong person in the 8th layer of the Purple Mansion realm can do it. One must know that although there is no danger for the 60th heavenly layer powerhouse in the Purple Mansion realm to face an army of it is absolutely impossible to defeat them with a single sword strike. A sword cultivator with such strength is at least a strong person in the 8th level of the Purple Mansion realm. A powerhouse in the 8th heaven of the Purple Mansion realm. As soon as this remark came out, a minister immediately said, isn't the swordsman who helped us kill the ancient corpse of the exorcism sect only the 5th heaven of the Purple Mansion realm? How come it's only been a few decades, and it's already the 8th heaven of the Purple Mansion realm? After the 5th heaven of each realm, the promotion speed is extremely slow. Under normal circumstances, it would take at least 50 years for Zifu realm 5th level to be promoted to 6th level, let alone promoted to 8th level. Why has it only been a few decades now, and that strong swordsman has already reached the 8th level of the Purple Mansion realm? That's right. The speed of this cultivation is a bit too fast, isn't it? Several other generals and ministers also spoke one after another. It feels incredible. That mysterious swordsman has great supernatural powers. It's not something we can guess. Chen Lao said with a serious expression. After all, the mysterious swordsman who used to be strong had condensed an avatar in the spiritual path and saved Qin Zining. The others nodded thoughtfully when they heard the words. By the way, the one who controlled the corpses of King Jin and the others just now, shouldn't it be this strong swordsman? A general suddenly remembered something, and said with a look of horror in his eyes. What he said immediately stunned everyone present, and then suddenly realized everyone was still curious just now, why the corpse exorcists would control Qin Shenzhan to help them besiege Li Fengqi. If the person who controls the corpses of Qin Shenzhan and others is not a member of the corpse exorcism sect, but the swordsman who has helped them several times before, that makes sense. However, that mysterious strong man is a sword cultivator. How can he still have the energy to practice the skills of the corpse exorcist sect? Someone made a suspicious voice. When the others heard the words, they were also extremely puzzled. People's energy and time are very limited. It must have been very difficult for that mysterious strongman to have such a powerful attainment in the way of swordsmanship. Why do you still have the energy to practice the skills of the corpse exorcist sect? However, no one could answer their shock and doubts. What is His Majesty thinking? General Zhenan noticed that Qin Zhonyan hadn't spoken, so he couldn't help but asked in doubt. I'm thinking about the true identity of that mysterious strong man. Qin Zhonyan looked solemn, and said slowly, if he helped me earlier because of his relationship with the great Xia royal family, then he shouldn't help me at all this time. Because in the final analysis, this battle is just a battle for the throne within the royal family. But he helped me, which is really strange. I doubt whether he is a member of the Daxia royal family, and he is of our line. P.S. Ask for a free gift. Everyone's support is the driving force for me to update. Beep beep. Chapter 94. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As soon as Qin Jianyan's words came out, the faces of everyone present changed drastically. I think his analysis is really reasonable. If that mysterious swordsman was only related to the royal family, there was absolutely no need to stop Qin Shenzhan, because Qin Shenzhan was also a member of the royal family after all. In this way, the greatest possibility is that they belong to the same vein as Qin Jianyan. If this conjecture is true, then wouldn't our great Xia imperial family have an extra powerhouse from the 8th level of the Purple Mansion realm? An important minister said incomparably excitedly. When he spoke, he deliberately lowered his voice, for fear of being heard by the soldiers in the distance. The others were also extremely excited. But who could he be? Qin Jianyan thought for a moment. With a troubled expression on his face, he said, among the children of the royal family in our lineage, there is not a single one who is as strong as a swordsman in the 8th level of the Purple Mansion realm. The descendants of the royal family of their line all live in the imperial city and nearby, and can often be seen. But he didn't feel that anyone was like a strong man in the 8th layer of the Purple Mansion realm. I think His Majesty can ask Genie Wei to secretly investigate the palace in the name of investigating the enemy's spies. Old Chen looked solemn, and said slowly, if that mysterious swordsman is really a member of the royal family, it is very likely that he is hiding somewhere in the palace. After all, there is a powerful startling dragon array in the imperial palace, which is the place with the most aura in the entire dynasty. Hearing what he said, Qin Jianyan hesitated, because when the mysterious swordsman saved his father, he once said that it is best not to investigate his identity. He didn't want to disturb this mysterious swordsman. Clean up the battlefield first, and let's talk about it after the squadron returns to the court. Qin Jianyan said slowly. He was going to discuss with Qin Feng after he returned to the imperial city, whether he should secretly investigate the imperial palace in the name of investigating the enemy's spies. After all, he would always ask Qin Feng about many things he didn't understand before. He felt that Qin Feng should be able to give him a good suggestion on this question. In the following time, several generals began to command the soldiers separately, responsible for cleaning the battlefield, and registering all the soldiers who surrendered, and let them identify each other, and execute all the soldiers who slaughtered the people during the siege of the Northern Army, and the busiest one was General Zhenan. He didn't stop at all, so he directly led an army of 15 to the north. The east, west, and south directions of the dynasty were fine, and there was no turmoil during this period, but the north is different. After Li Fengqi rebelled, the defense of the north was empty, and the northern barbarians invaded and plundered aggressively. He wanted to lead the army to drive away the invading and looting northern barbarians, and save the people from the fire and water. After the battle, Qin Jianyan did not rush back to the imperial city, and directly moved into Yanmen Pass. For the next period of time, he plans to stay in the north to stabilize the people's hearts. After all, when Li Fengqi rebelled, the entire north was in chaos. Countless cities were destroyed, a large number of people were displaced, and the hearts of the people were lost. His stay in the north can not only play a role in supervising local officials, but also stabilize the hearts of the people. At the same time, the news about the defeat of Li Fengqi and Qin Shenzhan began to spread rapidly among the dynasty. There are not a few people who pay attention to this rebellion, not only the many families and sects in the great Xia dynasty, but also several other great dynasties, although those dynasties did not dare to take the opportunity to invade and annex. And those who were worried about the great Xia royal family tore down the demon-suppressing tower in a rage, and they all died together, but they still kept paying attention. But no one thought that it would be Qin Jianyan who won in the end. Everyone was shocked. One must know that the combined army of Li Fengqi and Qin Shenzhan is already 110 million. Moreover, it was later reported that Qin Shenzhan invited more than a dozen Zifu realm powerhouses from several powerful sects to help him on the condition of ceding the territory. No matter how you look at this battle, it should be Qin Shenzhan who will win. They really couldn't figure out why it was Qin Jianyan who won in the end, but soon, news spread that there was a mysterious swordsman who defeated an army of 60 with one sword. This news was even more shocking than the news that Qin Jianyan's army had won. The 60 army was defeated by a mysterious swordsman with a single blow. Could it be that the mysterious swordsman has a cultivation level above the 8th level of the Purple Mansion realm? The mysterious master of swordsmanship, shouldn't he be Sword Immortal Xiaoyao? Sword Immortal Xiaoyao, who once wiped out the demon sect with one sword, should be very strong. But why did Sword Immortal Xiaoyao help Qin Jianyan? For a time, the entire Kanglan domain was filled with the voices of various discussions. They were shocked by the strength of the swordsman, and at the same time wondered why the swordsman wanted to help Qin Jianyan. All kinds of speculation emerge endlessly. Although most people agree, the person who made the move this time was Sword Immortal Xiaoyao, but why Xiaoyao's Sword Immortal attacked Qin Xuanshan's army, there is no unified answer. Some people think that Xiaoyao's Sword Immortal is a member of the Great Xia royal family, while others think that Qin Shunshan is usually domineering and accidentally offended Xiaoyao's Sword Immortal. What's more, those who are strong believe that they do what they want, and don't need a reason at all. It's possible that he just passed by and saw an army of 60, and wanted to try his sword skills. As for the news that Qin Shunshan and the others were turned into ancient corpses, because the people who knew about it were important ministers and generals, and Qin Jianyan ordered to block the news, it did not spread. After leaving the dense forest, Qin Feng was not in a hurry to return to the imperial tomb. Instead, he found a quiet place in a mountain range where even mercenaries seldom entered, and prepared to try to gather his consciousness again. Although the dead body control technique of the corpse exorcist faction has relatively high requirements for spiritual consciousness, but after successful cultivation, there is also a lot of improvement in spiritual consciousness. Qin Feng felt that this time he could almost succeed in cohesion. Deep in a mountain range, in an inaccessible place, there is an extremely huge lake. The surface of the lake is sparkling under the sunlight. In the middle of the lake, at a height of about half a foot from the water, there was a figure sitting there cross-legged, incomparably calm and peaceful. There are no fluctuations released from the body. It almost looks like a lifelike statue. Even the swimming fish in the lake were not afraid of him at all, and some fish even opened their mouths to bite his clothes hanging in the water. Qin Feng maintained this quiet and peaceful state for a full month. In the end, those birds and beasts who came to the lake to drink water were even used to Qin Feng's existence, thinking that Qin Feng was a statue. In fact, Qin Feng's current consciousness is in his own spiritual space. It was dark there. It's just that there are strange fluctuations of spiritual consciousness, which are constantly looming in the dark space. In the dark space, there is a phantom sitting cross-legged. Strands of spiritual consciousness drifted into the phantom's body and slowly merged. At the same time, this ghost image became more and more solid. The process was slow, but Qin Feng was not in a hurry. Chapter 95 The Witty Little White Fox. You are listening at novelfull.audio. And so, another full month passed. The morning sun rose slowly, dispelled the chill of the night, and fell on Qin Feng, who was sitting cross-legged about half a foot away from the lake. On his shoulders, there were actually a few small birds chirping, as if they were arguing about something. Suddenly, in Qin Feng's body, an extremely strange fluctuation spread out. This kind of fluctuation does not have any killing atmosphere, but at an extremely fast speed, it covered a range of hundreds of miles. At this moment, all the ferocious beasts and birds within a radius of 100 miles all felt as if they were being targeted by ancient ferocious beasts, and their souls trembled. Their bodies are stiff and difficult to move. If it wasn't for the occasional leaves falling, it would look like time stood still here. After an unknown amount of time, Qin Feng slowly opened his eyes. The eyes reveal an indescribable depth, as if a starry sky is hidden inside. Crash! At this moment, those small birds on Qin Feng's shoulders were released from their strange state, and quickly flapped their wings away from Qin Feng. Only then did they discover that Qin Feng was not a dead thing at all, but a strong human race. At the same time, within a radius of 100 miles, those magical beasts that seemed to be targeted by ancient fierce beasts finally returned to normal and were able to move. Their eyes were full of panic. They didn't know what happened just now. Could it be that there really was an ancient ferocious beast that passed by here? Call. Qin Feng, who opened his eyes, finally breathed a long sigh of relief, and murmured, "It took nearly a year to finally successfully condense the spiritual consciousness. It is really not easy." Prior to this, although the aura he needed for the Primordial Chaos Sword Body far surpassed that of ordinary practitioners, his level of improvement was slow, but that is also as long as one absorbs enough aura, one can break through easily. Even when breaking through the void refining realm, there is no threshold at all. Gathering his consciousness this time made him really feel the difficulty. I don't know if with my current strength, I can leapfrog to fight and kill the cultivators of the 5th level of the void refining realm. After sighing, Qin Feng murmured to himself somewhat uncertainly, if others heard this, they would definitely feel that he was dreaming, not to mention that the higher the realm, the greater the gap between each small realm, and ordinary people simply cannot leapfrog to fight. You must know that the 5th heaven of each great realm is a qualitative leap, and that is an even more insurmountable gap. However, Qin Feng dared to think so. So he was not just dreaming, but his whole cards are too. The Primordial Chaos Sword Body is a special physique unparalleled in the world. He is far superior to practitioners of the same level, and he has mastered the superb sword technique of Wanjian Guizong. In the Purple Mansion, a field such as Buddhist Pure Land has been opened up. Now the void refining realm has condensed the consciousness again. Qin Feng felt that it was really not particularly difficult for him to kill a 5th level practitioner of the void refining realm. It's a pity that in the entire Kanglan region, let alone the 5th level of the void refining realm, there are not even strong people in the void refining realm. I don't even have a chance to try. After thinking for a moment, Qin Feng shook his head helplessly. It seems that sometimes too strong is not a good thing. Not even a whetstone. Although there are experts in other stronger domains, Qin Feng has no plans to go to other domains for the time being, because he only pays attention to stability. If you want him to leave the Kanglan territory, you must at least be invincible in the void refining realm. Afterwards, Qin Feng got up slowly, did not stay here any longer, stepped on the void, and left the lake. After Qin Feng returned to the Imperial City, he found that Qin Zhonyan and the others were still in the north and hadn't come back. However, after knowing that they were not in danger, but to stabilize the hearts of the people in the north, Qin Feng didn't care. He went straight back to the Imperial tomb. What? The little white fox, who was lying on the deck chair basking in the sun, couldn't help being a little puzzled when he saw Qin Feng come back. She clearly remembered that Qin Feng was a useless prince. It is not even allowed to leave the Imperial Mausoleum. Why did it come out for a few months this time? Don't those Imperial guards care? But although she was curious in her heart, she didn't ask any more questions, but continued to bask in the sun. Huh? You haven't left yet? Seeing the little white fox lying on his reclining chair, Qin Feng said in surprise. The little white fox has run away several times before, even to the East China Sea. He thought that since he hadn't come back in the past few months, the little white fox had already run away, but he didn't expect that the little white fox was still here. Stinky scum, to actually despise this princess, it's too much. Hearing Qin Feng's words, the little white fox was very angry. This human actually disliked her. It's just that Qin Feng couldn't understand her complaints at all, so he came to the recliner and grabbed her, then gently threw her into the grass beside him, and lay down comfortably by himself. The recliner is still comfortable. Qin Feng couldn't help sighing. His spiritual consciousness has just successfully condensed and needs some time to warm up. Hateful. The little white fox who was thrown into the grass was even more angry, but she was too busy gathering gentian, and was too lazy to get angry with Qin Feng. During this period of time, with the gradual recovery of her cultivation, she was surprised to find that her comprehension of the way of swords improved very quickly while staying in this imperial tomb. This shocked her beyond belief. In the past, she only had this kind of situation in places where those strong swordsmen had retreated, but the little white fox is still smarter. She quickly guessed the reason. I think it must be because the Emperor Taizu, who was buried in the imperial tomb, was also a strong swordsman during his lifetime. The little white fox found a soft grass, and after climbing down, he closed his eyes, wanting to take this opportunity to directly condense his sword heart, so as to improve his kendo attainments to a higher level. In the next 6 months, many things happened in the Great Xiao dynasty. Qin Zhonyan stabilized the north, and after the class teacher returned to the court, he immediately started to deal with the matters of the fiefdoms of the various feudal lords. Jin Wang and Qi Wang's 5 vassals rebelled, and all the soldiers under their command were recruited, so he would not be polite to the lineage of these vassals. 50,000 soldiers, led by the ministers of the court, went to the mansions of various vassal kings in 5 routes to search their homes. The family members of those vassal kings have long been under the surveillance of Jinie, and they can't escape at all. They were all handed over to the Ministry of Punishment for interrogation, and those who participated in rebellion or oppressed the people would be punished as crimes. Part of the wealth and land accumulated by these vassal kings over thousands of years was returned to the exploited people, and the rest was transported to the imperial city by merchant ships and included in the national treasury. P.S. It's not easy to update. Please ask for a free gift, please. Beep beep. Chapter 96. You are listening at novelfull.audio. For several months in a row, merchant ships entered the imperial city continuously, and the scene was incomparably spectacular. A large amount of gold, silver, and jewelry, as well as cultivation resources, have been collected into the national treasury, and a large number of officials are responsible for counting these treasures, which is very lively. Less than half of these treasures have arrived, and the treasury can't even put them down. But fortunately, after Qin Feng ascended the throne, he never accepted a concubine, resulting in many palaces in the harem being empty, just in time for these treasures. Your Majesty, with such a large amount of wealth, all of which will be included in the national treasury, the national power of our great Xia dynasty will surely rise to a higher level, far surpassing the other great dynasties. Hubu Shangshu said to Qin Feng with great joy, this wealth is in the hands of the various feudal lords, and they can only be left to indulge in luxury, but it is different if it is placed in the treasury. It can be used for the people. Hey, the wealth accumulated by the 5 vassal kings over the past 10,000 years is several times that of the national treasury. I really don't know how many common people are suffering from them. Qin Feng couldn't help but said. Hubu Shangshu was also silent when he heard the words. He knew before that the 5 feudal kings must be extremely rich, but he was still surprised by the wealth of the 5 feudal kings' families. These wealth are the blood and sweat of the people, and even their lives. Your Majesty, how should the other princes be dealt with? Asked the scholar of Wenyuan Pavilion. Jinie will cooperate with the criminal department to investigate these vassal kings. As long as they have violated the law, their family property will be confiscated and punished as a crime. Qin Feng said coldly, even if you haven't violated the law, you have to turn over all the good land and return it to the people. Although during this period of time, there were quite a few old antiques from the royal family who came to persuade him to be considerate, but he didn't intend to show mercy. According to the order. Many ministers present are respectful. Afterwards, everyone got busy. After Qin Feng finished dealing with many matters, he came to the imperial tomb. Brother Huang, these 2 300-year-old blood ginsengs were sent from Prince Jin's mansion, and they have the effect of prolonging life. As soon as he came to the imperial tomb, Qin Feng took out a sandalwood box. Qin Feng is now at the spirit transformation realm, and his progress is slow. He thinks that Qin Feng must have missed the best age for cultivation, and it may be difficult for him to make any progress in the future, so I specially gave these 2 blood ginseng plants to Qin Feng to help him prolong his life. Thank you. Qin Feng didn't refuse either, and accepted it with a smile. After a pause, he asked, how is the prince's matter handled? It's almost done. When Qin Feng said this, an angry expression appeared on his face, and he said, those vassal kings searched for the people's fat and people's anointing, and the wealth accumulated over the past 10,000 years is actually several times that of the national treasury. Normally, those vassal kings don't have to pay taxes and have been annexing land. Naturally, they are all rich and invincible. Qin Feng was not surprised. Brother Huang, the national treasury is extremely abundant now. Where do you think it should be used the most? Qin Feng couldn't help asking. In a few days, he was going to discuss with the ministers of the DPRK in China, and ask Qin Feng's opinion in advance. If these wealth are not used, it is also a waste. Nature is education. Qin Feng said indifferently, the youth is strong, so the country is strong. Educate. Qin Feng was startled, obviously surprised. His previous plan was to return wealth to the people and exempt them from taxes for decades, and recruit some strong people from the Zifu realm to enhance the deterrent power of the dynasty. Nowadays, there are very few major dynasties, whether it is the school of literature and Tao or the school of martial arts, many ordinary people who want to become officials or practice can only enter those sects and families, which instead increases the strength of those sects and families. Qin Feng said indifferently, using those wealth to open more colleges and select talents is the best policy. After hearing Qin Feng's analysis, Qin Zhonyan suddenly realized that he was a bit too short-sighted just thinking about reducing or exempting taxes. What the emperor said is very true. I will ask the ministers to discuss and add a college in a few days. Qin Zhonyan said happily. Afterwards, he asked Qin Feng some more about his reform plan. The vassal kings everywhere have been eliminated, and the resistance to his reform is not so great. Qin Feng also appropriately mentioned some more timely reforms. Everything made Qin Zhonyan amazed again and again. He felt that Qin Feng's way of thinking was completely different from anyone he met in Kanglanyu. If Qin Feng hadn't grown up with him since childhood, he even doubted whether Qin Feng was from Kanglanyu. By the way, have you seen any suspicious people during these years here? After asking about the policy, Qin Zhonyan couldn't help asking. Why did you suddenly think of asking this? Hearing this, Qin Feng asked with some doubts, could it be that some evil spirits have sneaked into the palace? It's not. Qin Zhonyan shook his head, and then said in a deep voice, I suspect that Xiaoyao Sword God is a member of the royal family of our lineage, so I asked Genie Wei to investigate secretly in the entire imperial city including the imperial palace. But nothing was gained, only this emperor's mausoleum is special. There is no Genie Wei to investigate, so I asked the emperor brother if he had seen any suspicious people appear near the Imperial Mausoleum. When Qin Feng heard this, his expression changed slightly. He naturally knew that after killing the demon sect, he had the title of Xiaoyao Sword God, but he never expected that Qin Zhonyan would come to ask himself if he had seen the Xiaoyao Sword God. That's it. After Qin Feng paused, he shook his head and said, I have never seen anyone suspicious. Hearing this, although Qin Zhonyan was somewhat disappointed, he was not surprised. The spiritual energy in this imperial tomb is thin. If those strong men hide in the palace, they will definitely choose other places with abundant spiritual energy. After that, Qin Zhonyan didn't stay here for long, and left after chatting for a few words. A few days after Qin Zhou came, Qin Zining also came to the imperial tomb. But it's for lunch. She hasn't been here for a long time, and she wants to eat the food made by Qin Feng. Qin Feng smiled helplessly, but he didn't refuse, and cooked several special dishes. Seeing this, the little white fox was naturally very happy, even though Qin Zining still used her hands up and down, ravaging her body. But after all, there are delicious ones. She just endured it. During the meal, Qin Zining talked about many things. The burial sword valley will open in 3 years' time. I don't know if I can get a good sword then. While chatting, she suddenly said worriedly. Buried Sword Valley. Hearing this, Qin Feng frowned slightly, and said, is there such a place in the Kanglan region? Why don't I know? Don't the emperor know about the Burial Sword Valley? But when Qin Zining heard this, she was a little surprised and said, the Burial Sword Valley is not in the Kanglan region. It's in the mountains between the Kanglan region and the Dongzhang region. Hear her say that. Qin Feng frowned and recalled, after a while, I found some memories about the Burial Sword Valley, but not many. Seeing this, Qin Zining immediately told Qin Feng some information about Burial Sword Valley. Chapter 97 Go to. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Eternal Continent is composed of many domains. The Kanglan domain is located in the southeast corner of the Eternal Continent, the Dongzhang domain is located on the west side of the Kanglan domain, and the two domains are adjacent. However, because there are hundreds of thousands of mountains in the middle, where mercenaries and bandits are rampant, the connection between the two domains is not very close. The Burial Sword Valley is located in the 100,000 mountains between the two domains. This valley was originally very ordinary, but there was once a strong swordsman who broke through to the Saint Realm and buried the sword he had used here. Later, many sword masters from the two domains followed suit, burying their swords in the valley before dying. As more and more strong men buried their swords here, the name of the valley was also called the Valley of Burying Swords. I don't know how many good swords were buried inside. On weekdays, this Valley of Burying Swords is not open, only the sword can enter it. and after entering it, there is no way to come out. It can only be entered when it is opened occasionally. On the day of opening, swordsmen from both domains will go there, wanting to see if they can get the approval of those peerless swords inside and take them away. At your age, you have such martial arts and swordsmanship. Even before the Demon Sealing War, you can be regarded as a genius. Do you still have to worry about not getting a good sword? Qin Feng comforted with a smile. However, Qin Zining's pretty face was still worried. She said, going into the Burial Sword Valley to get swords, whether you can get the approval of those swords depends not on your cultivation and kendo attainments, but on the likes and dislikes of those swords, no matter what your cultivation level and talent are. As long as you are not recognized by those swords, everything is useless. Qin Feng frowned slightly upon hearing this. Can this be done? But he felt relieved after thinking about it. The swords in the Burial Sword Valley are all high-grade, more spiritual, and they are not just cast. They used to have owners. To gain their approval, to have the shadow of their former master is probably the most important thing. If that's the case, then there's nothing to worry about. Qin Feng said with a faint smile, it's useless to worry anyway. Hearing his comfort, Qin Zining was a little dumbfounded, but it made sense, and then happily ate the food made by Qin Feng. After eating and chatting with Qin Feng for a while, he left. Buried Sword Valley, I happen to be short of a sword, you can go and have a look. Qin Feng muttered to himself, after signing in for so many years, although he has obtained a lot of weapons, he doesn't have many swords, and their grades are very average. It broke after he used it a few times. He thought he could go to the Burial Sword Valley to have a look. After all, there are quite a few strong swordsmen who buried their swords there, and even if you can't find a suitable one, maybe you can get a good sword after signing in. Smelly scum, sleep too much, dreaming in broad daylight. Hearing the words, the little white fox shook his head and said, she felt that the good sword in the Burial Sword Valley, no matter how much she did not value cultivation and talent, would not be able to recognize Qin Feng, who had just transformed into a spiritual realm. After all, laziness is not the quality a sword repairer should possess. 3 years passed by in a hurry. During this period, all kinds of academies, whether it is martial arts or literary arts, have sprung up like mushrooms. In the territory of the great Xia royal family, a large number of ordinary people were recruited into the academy. Not only that, even people from other dynasties poured into the many academies of the great Xia dynasty. Such a scene made other dynasties a little wary. Because of this, sooner or later, the strength of the great Xia dynasty will far exceed those of their several great dynasties. But even though they were vigilant in their hearts, the other great dynasties were helpless. After all, opening a large number of colleges requires a lot of resources, their national treasury is not sufficient, and they can't cut off the feudal clan like a strong man, so they can only look at it and sigh, in the blink of an eye. It was the day when the Burial Sword Valley opened. Above a square in the Imperial Palace, a huge ancient ship hovered in midair, and below are people like Qin Jianyan. The age requirements for entering the Burial Sword Valley are very broad, as long as they are under 100 years old, but because sword cultivators are relatively rare and not many, there are less than 10 people going to Jianfeng. Qin Feng was also among them. Brother Huang, even if you can't find a suitable sword in the Burial Sword Valley, it doesn't matter. Don't be disappointed. Even talented swordsmen will return empty-handed. Qin Jianyan comforted Qin Feng. Although he didn't understand why Qin Feng wanted to go to Burial Sword Valley, he still agreed. After all, this was the first time Qin Feng offered to leave the imperial tomb. He was too happy, so how could he refuse? Kindness. Qin Feng nodded and said with a smile, I will definitely not be disappointed. Seeing that Qin Feng was in a good mood and was already prepared for not being able to get the sword, Qin Jianyan didn't say anything else. Afterwards, everyone boarded the boat one after another. Old Qin was also among them, accompanying him for protection. The ancient ship lifted off slowly, and then slowly drove towards the direction of the mountains between the Kanglan region and the Dongxing region. Shirwan Dashan is still far away from the great Xia dynasty. But the speed of the ancient ship is also very fast. In less than half a month, the ancient ship arrived among the mountains. There are endless mountains everywhere, towering peaks, many tops of the peaks, and there are layers of snow and clouds. The scenery here is beautiful. Qin Zining, who was always lively, did not come out to appreciate it. she was flipping through a picture book. After such a long time, an unknown number of strong men have entered the Burial Sword Valley, and some of them compile the picture book for sale. The shape, grade, and attributes of many swords are marked on it. Qin Zining should write it down quickly, so that after entering the Burial Sword Valley, he can quickly know whether a sword is suitable for him, saving a lot of time. Roar. Navigating among the mountains, the sound of roaring monsters came and went, because there are many mountains here, and there are no cities inhabited by humans, only some mercenary groups and bandits. Therefore, the number and types of warcraft here are very large. There are often monsters that attack their ancient ships, but after all, this ancient ship was left before the Demon Sealing War, and it was protected by powerful formations, so those monsters couldn't do anything to them. On the way to the Burial Sword Valley, Qin Feng and the others could occasionally see warships from other dynasties or sects in the Kanglan region sailing in the direction of the Burial Sword Valley. Obviously, they all knew the news that the Burial Sword Valley would be opened in advance, so it sailed for more than 10 days. Hiss! What an astonishing sword intent! Qin Zhou looked at the sword intent soaring into the sky in the distance, and couldn't help but exclaimed, although he is not a swordsman, his younger brother is a very talented swordsman genius, so he also came together. As soon as this remark came out, many eyes on the ancient ship also looked towards the distant sky. I only saw the monstrous sword intent, soaring straight to the sky. The terrifying aura of swordsmanship can be clearly felt even thousands of miles away. Such a terrifying breath of swordsmanship, how many peerless swords are there in it? It is said that the sage of swordsmanship also has several used weapons left behind. I don't know if it is true or not. Regardless of whether there are any weapons used by saints, just let me take one away. Many royal children on the ancient ship couldn't help exclaiming. Even Chen Lao's muddy eyes showed a complicated expression. Although only a sword is buried here, it is also the pursuit of each sword cultivator in this life. Qin Feng also opened his eyes, looking at the Burial Sword Valley in the distance, but the expression is very calm. Chapter 98. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Above the Burial Sword Valley, no one dared to approach it, no matter if it was a strong person or a powerful monster, because anyone who gets close will be torn into pieces by the amazing sword intent in an instant. When Qin Feng and the others arrived at the entrance of the Burial Sword Valley, although they could feel the powerful sword intent, they were not as terrifying as the sword intent above the Burial Sword Valley. But here is empty. There are no ancient ships of other forces, only a few people. What's going on? Has the Burial Sword Valley been opened? Seeing this scene, Qin Zining asked suspiciously. Should not. Qin Feng said indifferently. The Burial Sword Valley can only be entered by Tianjiao under the age of If the Burial Sword Valley has already been opened, those who escorted Tianjiao from the forces should wait at the entrance. Qin Zining nodded, thinking it made sense. The power to block the Sword Burial Valley is gradually weakening. The Sword Burial Valley should open in 3 months. Chen Lao took out a piece of jade, and after feeling it for a while, said slowly, this is not the first time that the Great Xia dynasty has sent people to the Burial Sword Valley, so there are special artifacts that can sense the power that blocks the Burial Sword Valley. Afterwards, in order to confirm the news, Mr. Chen sent someone to inquire, and learned that other forces also had the same speculation. After going to this place for a look, he left one person to guard, and the rest went to Burial Sword City rest. Another 3 months, Qin Zining said, we came so early. It's better to come early than late. Old Chen said slowly, let's go to Burial Sword City first and wait. Afterwards, the ancient ship sailed towards Jianjian City, which was 30 miles away. Originally, the Burial Sword City was a place for some bandits and mercenaries to rest and trade with each other, but now it has become a place where many powerful forces are waiting for the Burial Sword Valley to open. Crowded, at this time, a large number of ancient ships had already parked outside Jianjian City. One part is from Dongcang region, and the other part is from Kanglan region. The Kanglan domain is dominated by the Imperial dynasty, while the Dongcang domain is dominated by sections. In those restaurants in the city, there are all powerful people from various forces, as well as powerful casual cultivators drinking and chatting, learning about each other's information in each other's domain. Boom boom. And at this moment, an ancient ship slowly approached and stopped outside the city. It is the ancient ship of the Great Xia dynasty. This Kanglan region doesn't even have a serious swordsmanship sect. It's really strange that the Great Xia dynasty even produced a swordsman genius like Qin Zining. The person who spoke was the sole kendo sect in the two domains, the suzerain of the cold sword sect. After all, Qin Zining is the #1 swordsman genius in the Kanglan region, and he naturally heard a little about it during the chats with those dynasty powerhouses and casual cultivators in the Kanglan region. It's just a rumor. I haven't seen it with my own eyes. Who knows if it's as powerful as the legends say? The lord of the Eastern Sanyu sect next to him said dismissively, I comprehended swordsmanship in my dream. Throughout the ages, I have never heard of such a genius of swordsmanship. The suzerains of the other major sects in the Eastern Song region also nodded their heads. I feel that the rumors about Qin Zining should be exaggerated. The master of the cold sword sect didn't continue to say anything, but fell into deep thought, obviously thinking about something. After Qin Feng and the others got off the ancient ship, they went straight to find the inn. Although they could hear these discussions along the way, they ignored them. Mr. Chen took it around and realized that because too many people had rushed in recently, the inn in Jianjian City was already full. However, they were not short of money, and directly bought the mansion of a mercenary group in the city, and used it as a temporary residence. There are a lot of rooms, just choose whatever you want. Qin Feng found a quieter place and stayed there after having it cleaned. System, help me sign in at Jianjian City. As soon as he came to the room, Qin Feng said lightly. Ding! Congratulations to the master, you have successfully signed in at Jianjian City, and you have been rewarded with the mountain and river seal. The system mechanical beep sounds. Shanha seal. Is it a weapon? Hearing this, Qin Feng frowned slightly, and then checked the information of Shanhian. Turns out it's not a weapon, it's a martial skill, mountain and river seal. After casting, it can condense a mountain-like seal, which is extremely powerful, but there is a fatal flaw. A fatal flaw? Seeing these words, Qin Feng frowned slightly. He doesn't like having incomplete martial skills. However, Qin Feng saw that fatal flaw was that it consumed a lot of spiritual energy when casting it. It consumes a lot of spiritual energy. Is this also a shortcoming? Qin Feng looked blank, and murmured, perhaps this is a shortcoming for others. He wasn't worried at all, because of his special physique. The aura in his body is like an ocean, no need to worry about running out at all. Thinking of this, Qin Feng didn't hesitate, and then merged the Shanha seal. A lot of mysterious information poured into Qin Feng's mind. He found that this mountain and river seal was stronger than he had imagined. He couldn't help but became interested and felt that he could practice it when he had time. Over the next month or so, the forces that came to bury Sword City did not increase much. Because of those powerful forces, most of them knew the news that the Burial Sword Valley was going to be opened at the first time, and came here ahead of time. Only a small number of casual cultivators got to know the news relatively late, and in this more than a month, they arrived late. Boom boom. In an uninhabited mountain range far away from Jianjian City, Qin Feng's figure stood in the sky, holding the moon shape with his hands, and the vast spiritual energy condensed between his hands. A looming mountain, completely condensed by spiritual energy, gradually appeared between his hands. He slammed the mountain down. Boom! Carrying a terrifying power, this mountain smashed towards the mountain below, and it rose against the wind. In the blink of an eye, it turned out to be like a real mountain. The flowers, plants, fish, trees, birds and animals on it can all be seen clearly. Boom! The mountain condensed by Qin Feng's spiritual energy smashed on the mountain below, directly smashing the whole mountain into flat ground. The original position of the mountain has been replaced by the mountain formed by his aura. The scene was incomparably astonishing and shocking. The power of this mountain and river seal is not bad. Qin Feng muttered to himself, if it's against a strong enemy, it should be useful. Although he is a swordsman, it is not a bad thing to master some other martial arts besides swordsmanship. Afterwards, Qin Feng waved his big sleeve, and the mountain formed by the aura below dissipated. Only a flat land remained, as if there had never been a mountain before. Qin Feng, who was quite satisfied with his cultivation results, turned around and left this place, preparing to return to Jianqing for burial. Chapter 99 Challenge. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Because she had to stay here for 3 consecutive months, Qin Zining did not stay in the city all the time during this time, but practiced in the nearby mountains. But at this time, she did not hunt and kill monsters. In the sky, Qin Zining stepped into the void, looked at the young man standing opposite him with an indifferent expression, and confronted him. In the distance, there are many people of the same age who came to watch after hearing the news. What's going on? What is this for? Someone just arrived and asked impatiently. Chen, the disciple of the great elder of the Cold Sword sect in the eastern Song region, wants to challenge Qin Zining, the #1 swordsman in the Kanglan region. Someone next to him who knew what happened explained. As soon as these words came out, many people who just came here showed surprised eyes, and at the same time, they were a little excited. Chen Chang's swordsmanship talent, no matter what, can be ranked in the top 3 in Dongtsang region. And this Qin Zining is the #1 swordsman genius in Kanglan region. I don't know who will win or lose between the two of them. It goes without saying that it must be Chen. You must know that the Kanglan region doesn't even have a master of swordsmanship, and Qin Zining's reputation as the #1 swordsman in the Kanglan region is too watery. That's right, the so-called De sword intent is probably a low-level swordsmanship, but there are no high-grade swordsmanship in the Kanglan region, so it is passed down as a godsend. People around are talking about it. Everyone was guessing who would win the duel between Qin Zining and Chen. Most people think that the winner will be Chen, because the Cold Sword sect that Chen belongs to is, after all, the master of swordsmanship, although Qin Zining is the #1 swordsman in Kanglanyu. After all, Kanglanyu doesn't even have a serious swordsmanship sect. Miss Zining, today I came here specially to learn your sword skills. Chen cupped his hands and said with a smile, over the years, he wanted to win the title of the talent in the eastern Song region, but he never succeeded. Therefore, he wanted to defeat Qin Zining, who was the swordsman in the Kanglan region, and improve his reputation in the eastern Song region. Sorry, I'm not interested. When Qin Zining heard this, she said it very coldly. Why? Chen frowned, then sneered, don't you dare, the proud look on his face. My swordsmanship is too strong. Qin Zining said calmly, I'm afraid that if I accidentally kill you, it will cause a conflict between the Cold Sword sect and our great Xia dynasty. Chen is a strong man. If she only relies on ordinary swordsmanship, she may not be able to defeat Chen, but if she used the De sword intent, the killing power would be too powerful, and she was afraid that she would kill Chen accidentally. After all, Cold Sword sect is also a big sect, although it is far away in the eastern Sangyu. If she really accidentally kills Chen, it will be very troublesome. You are arrogant. That when Chen heard this, his face turned ashen. No one had ever dared to speak to him like that. While speaking, he drew his sword and charged towards Qin Zining. Ha! Under the sunlight, the long sword in Chen hand shone with a cold light, and carried a powerful sword energy, and it killed Qin Zining in the blink of an eye. The momentum is like a rainbow. Seeing this, Qin Zining reacted quickly, and immediately drew his sword and slashed out. Boom! When the long swords carrying astonishing sword energy in their hands collided, an astonishing wave of spiritual energy erupted immediately. The shattered sword energy raged in all directions. Seeing this, the onlookers quickly backed away. With this sword strike, the two were evenly divided, and they both retreated tens of feet. Kindness. Chen was obviously surprised, and said, I didn't expect you to be much stronger than I imagined. He thought that he could defeat Qin Zining with one sword, but he didn't expect that Qin Zining's sword was not weak. You will regret this. Qin Zining said coldly. Now that Chen had already taken the initiative, she would naturally not be polite. Although she is just a child in front of Qin Feng on weekdays, she has already matured after many years of experience, and she will never be polite when facing the enemy. Ha! Qin Zining took the initiative to attack this time. On the long sword in her hand, the sword energy was like water, and she rushed towards Chen. Ha! See how I can defeat you and destroy your self-confidence. Chen greeted him with a big smile. The two sides immediately fought fiercely together. Ding, ding, dang, dang. In the sky, the figures of the two intertwined, their long swords collided, and a dazzling light burst out, which was very dazzling. The shattered sword energy continuously exploded towards the surroundings. Swordsmanship has improved. Qin Feng, who had just finished practicing Shanhian, passed by here, and seeing this scene from a distance, couldn't help but praise. Compared with before, Qin Zining's swordsmanship has improved a lot during the hunting of monsters during this period. In the ensuing battle, the battle situation was still very fierce and anxious. Qin Chong was dozens of years older, and his cultivation was a little ahead of Qin Zining's. But Qin Zining's swordsmanship was even more mysterious, and it was hard to tell the winner. Boom! It was another collision. Qin Chong and Qin Zining backed up again and again, and were sent flying more than 100 feet away. Even, Qin Chong faintly fell into the disadvantage and retreated further. How can you be so strong, a sword cultivator with no clan or family? Qin Chong was extremely angry. In the battle just now, he found that Qin Zining's swordsmanship was extremely exquisite, and he was no match for Qin Zining at all. He had never met such an evenly matched opponent as Qin Zining. Strength is not determined by the sect, Qin Zining said lightly. Humph. Hearing this, Qin Chong snorted coldly and said, without the support of a powerful sect, how can there be a powerful swordsmanship? Next, I will show you the wonderful swordsmanship of my cold sword sect. While speaking, a cold sword intent suddenly erupted in his body, and the long sword in his hand quickly froze. Like an ice sculpture, the temperature in the entire area even dropped a lot accordingly. Shoo! Qin Chong cut out with a sword. The cold sword light immediately slashed towards Qin Zining, leaving an icy road in mid-air along the way, which was incomparably spectacular, exudes an extremely dangerous atmosphere. What a terrifying sword! Is this the most powerful sword technique of the cold sword sect? The sword cultivator is already very powerful, and with such a powerful sword technique, it feels like Qin Chong can even fight beyond a small realm. Qin Zining's performance is indeed very strong, but with such a powerful swordsmanship, he is still doomed to lose. The voice of exclamation kept ringing. Even people who were a little higher than Qin Chong felt the aura of danger and found it difficult to resist. Since you think De sword intent is an unpopular sword technique, then I will show you what De sword intent is like. That when Qin Zining saw the cold sword glow coming, she let out a yell, and an extremely astonishing sword intent was also released from her body. This sword intent is like a surging river, and the surging sound is like ocean waves. She slashed out with a sword, with a majestic sword intent, galloping towards the cold sword light. Boom! A more terrifying energy fluctuation suddenly erupted. The shattered sword energy raged across the sky and the earth. Seeing this, the people watching around hurriedly backed away, and even used spiritual energy to protect their bodies, fearing they would be injured. Chapter 100. Someone eyes on Qin Zining. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Like the sword intent of a surging river, it shattered the cold sword glow in an instant, and then continued to sweep towards Qin Chong. Boom! Such a terrifying Tao sword intent cut Qin Chong from the air and hit the ground heavily. A large pit with a radius of tens of feet was smashed out, and smoke and dust billowed. Silence. The entire area fell into silence. Everyone looked at this scene in astonishment, their eyes filled with disbelief. After a long time, there was a sound of exclamation. Defeated. Qin Chong actually lost. He is the top 3 swordsman in the Eastern Sangyu. He is not Qin Zining's opponent. The De sword intent just now is really terrifying. I have never seen such an astonishing sword technique. It even crushes all the sword techniques in the Kanglan region. Shouts of exclamation resounded among the crowd. They thought Qin Chong was sure to win. Unexpectedly, it was Qin Zining who won in the end. Moreover, the rumored De sword intent was so terrifying, they were all shocked. Ah, my meridians! At this moment, Qin Chong below let out a painful scream. Although Qin Zining's sword just now couldn't directly kill him, but it cut off all the meridians in his body, he became a complete piece of shit. Hiss! Hearing Qin Chong's screams, there were gasps all around. Unexpectedly, such a master of swordsmanship would end up in such a fate. I advised you before. Qin Zining looked at Qin Chong below, and said calmly, although Qin Chong was extremely miserable, she didn't feel pity for it. She didn't want to accept Qin Chong's challenge just now. It was Qin Chong who insisted on attacking her. She was just defending herself. Ha! And at this moment, an old man appeared, looking at Qin Chong, who was seriously injured on the ground. His expression was extremely ugly. He is Qin Chong's protector, responsible for protecting Qin Chong's safety. Now Qin Chong has been abolished. If the master of the Cold Sword sect found out, he would be severely punished. However, although his face was very ugly, the old man did not attack Qin Zining, because Qin Chong took the initiative to challenge Qin Zining and lost. If he made a move against Qin Zining, it would damage the reputation of the Cold Sword sect. What's more, he didn't need to think about it to know that behind Qin Zining, there must be someone protecting him, not necessarily weaker than him. Even if he made a move, he might not be able to win Qin Zining. Walk. The old man's face was gloomy. He grabbed Qin Chong's shoulder, and then flew towards the distance. He tried to find a way to save Qin Chong as much as possible, so as not to let Qin Chong be completely abolished. After Qin Chong was taken away, Qin Zining did not stay here, and left here to continue her training. The crowd in this area, looking at the two people who left one after another, was talking a lot. They didn't expect today's challenge to have such a result. As for Qin Feng, he was also preparing to leave. Kindness. However, at this moment, he suddenly frowned slightly. He looked in the direction Qin Zining left. He found that two people were staring at Qin Zining, and followed them secretly. Although the cultivation of those two people was not strong enough to protect Qin Zining's royal family, they had powerful spiritual fluctuations on their bodies, which was very dangerous. Boss, what are we going after Qin Zining for? A bald head with muscles exploding all over his body, said with doubts in his heart. What else can I do? The deposed sword intent cultivated by Qin Zining is so powerful and terrifying. Shen Lian was dressed in a black robe, exuding an evil aura from head to toe, and said solemnly, if we get the cultivation method, we will definitely be able to sell it for a good price. Is it too dangerous? Hearing the words, the bald head immediately said, the person responsible for protecting that chick must have a very strong cultivation base. I'm afraid we are no match for him. If they fought for too long and attracted those strong men from the great Xia dynasty in Jianjian city, they would definitely die. Idiot, have you forgotten that we still have a 6th order spiritual weapon imitation in our hands? Shen Lian said coldly. Although the 6th level spiritual weapon in their hands is a fake and can only be used once, its power is half of that of the real 6th level spiritual weapon. It is easy to suppress the cultivators below the 5th level of the Purple Mansion realm. What? Boss wants to use the imitation 6th order spirit weapon. When the bald head heard this, he exclaimed with great distress, we almost lost our lives, so we got it by chance. It would be a pity to use it up, right? Don't worry. As long as we get the cultivation method of this little girl Dai Jiani, selling it will definitely be worth more than this imitation 6th order spirit weapon. After a pause, Shen Lian continued, what's more, we can take this chick away directly. With her talent, if she is sold to other domains, she will definitely be able to sell her for a good price. Although there are many powerful people in the great Xia royal family, all of them are in the city of Burial Sword, but he doesn't care at all. He is a well-known bandit among these mountains, and he has lived here for hundreds of years. He wanted to hide, but not many people could find him among these mountains. When the bald man next to him heard Shen Lian's plan, his eyes lit up. Not only can they take deposed sword intent away, but they can also take Qin Zining away as well. Boss is really smart. Hearing the words, the bald head couldn't help but admire. In this way, they can make a lot of money. Maybe in the future, we will be able to establish a sect, and we don't have to continue to be bandits in these mountains. Afterwards, the two speeded up and continued to chase in Qin Zining's direction. After Qin Zining defeated Qin Chong, she went to a valley, ready to hunt a giant ice python there. The royal priest also entered the valley with her. Hey, this chick is ours. Traveling through the dense forest, Shen Lian looked at the entrance of the valley in the distance and said with a grim smile. The bald man next to him was also very excited, but suddenly, the two of them stopped, because under an ancient tree in front, there was a figure looking at them indifferently. I don't know if the two of you are following all the way. Is there something going on? Qin Feng asked lightly. He was actually a little curious about the purpose of these two people chasing Qin Zining. Originally, Shen Lian and the bald head were curious about what Qin Feng was doing here, but after hearing the words, they immediately understood that Qin Feng knew that they were chasing them all the way. At the same time, I also guessed in my heart that Qin Feng had the same idea as them, and he should also be playing Qin Zining's idea. Humph. Asking for the sake of knowing. Shen Lian snorted coldly, and said, "Boy, I'm going to make up my mind about this deposed sword intent. I advise you to get out of here quickly, otherwise, you will die without a place to bury you." He concluded that Qin Feng hadn't succeeded yet, otherwise, it would be impossible to stay here, and he should leave immediately after getting the deposed sword intent. So that's how it is. Qin Feng did not expect that the target of these two guys was actually Qin Zining's deposed sword intent, and then said calmly, "It seems that today we must kill you too." These two sneaked around and followed Qin Zining, who already had a murderous intent in his heart. Now that he knew the purpose of these two people, the killing intent in his heart became even worse. P.S. Many people are asking, when will the protagonist reveal his identity? In fact, I don't really want to spoil it, because it would be boring if it was spoiled. I can only tell you that I have edited the outline and details of the plot when the protagonist appeared 7 or 8 times, and it is guaranteed to be very exciting. I will definitely present the most exciting plot to everyone. Chapter 101 Opening of the Burial Sword Valley. You are listening at novelfull.audio. It seems that you must seek death. Seeing Qin Feng not leaving, Shen Lian's eyes showed a cruel look, and said, "Before I die, I will tell you that I am the #1 bandit in the 100,000 mountains. Shen Lian, don't even know who killed you after you get to the underworld." After finishing speaking, he looked at the bald head beside him, and signaled that the bald head should finish Qin Feng. The bald head didn't hesitate at all, and directly killed Qin Feng. At the same time, an extremely violent thunder surged out from his body, enveloping his entire body. His whole body was like a bolt of lightning. Wherever it passed, all the trees around it instantly became scorched black. Terrible. It's just a matter of time to try Shanhain again. Although Qin Feng could kill him directly, he felt that he could be proficient in descending Shanhain. While speaking, the surge of spiritual energy began to condense rapidly in his right hand. Almost instantly, a palm-sized mountain appeared. Boom! Qin Feng smashed the mountain, and the mountain began to rise against the wind. In an instant it was already tens of feet in size, and it smashed into the bald head who was rushing to kill. What a terrifying martial skill! Looking at the falling mountain, the bald man let out a terrified voice. He felt great pressure. Although this mountain is only tens of feet in size, in his opinion, it is no different from the real mountain. In the next instant, the mountain had directly smashed the bald head into a blood mist. In front of this mountain, he was as if made of mud. The smell of blood pervades the place. What? Shen Lian turned pale with shock. His companion was at the Purple Mansion realm, not a cat or a dog. In front of this young man, he was so vulnerable that he was crushed into a blood mist in an instant. Just when he was shocked, the mountain continued to smash towards him. The power has not diminished. Bastard, you forced me to use that spiritual weapon. Shen Lian also ignored the shock, and said through gritted teeth, "I will crush you later." While speaking, he sacrificed a small black pagoda directly from the ring. The small tower was not big, but it exuded a terrifying aura. Under Shen Lian's control, the small tower directly faced the mountain, trying to smash it into pieces. However, the next scene made Shen Lian's face instantly pale and full of despair. Crack! The small tower collapsed in an instant, and it couldn't stop such a terrifying mountain at all. Puff! And Shen Lian was just directly pierced by the fragments of the small tower, instantly piercing through his body. His breath weakened rapidly, and his eyes fixed on Qin Feng. It's hard to believe that I was killed by such an unknown person. Thump! With Shen Lian's breath completely cut off, he hit the ground heavily. This dense forest also returned to calm. After killing Shen Lian and the other two, Qin Feng didn't stay any longer, turned around and left. The news of Qin Chang's abolition quickly spread among the various forces in Jianjian City. Many people are shocked. Unexpectedly, the first swordsman Tianjiao who came out of Kanglanyu, which didn't even have a sword sect, would directly abolish the Tianjiao Qinchong in the cold sword sect. Those people who didn't pay attention to Qin Zining before and felt that her name was too watery also obediently shut their mouths. As for Han Jianzong, he was extremely angry. After all, Qinchong is the arrogance that they spent a lot of effort to cultivate. Now that it is abolished like this, it is an extremely huge blow to them. But no matter how angry Han Jianzong was, it was useless, and he didn't dare to really start a war with the Great Xia dynasty, because after all, the Great Xia dynasty is a powerful force comparable to the Cold Sword sect. If you go to war, you can only lose both sides. In the blink of an eye, the day to open the Burial Sword Valley has arrived. Before the sun had fully risen in the morning, the ancient ships in Jianjian City sailed in the direction of Jianjian Valley. These ancient ships are not only tools for navigation, but also have strong defenses and are very safe. It can prevent the arrogance of one's own power from being snatched by people from other powers after obtaining the peerless sword. Not long after, a large number of ancient ships had parked at the entrance of the Burial Sword Valley, and it was extremely lively. People from many forces are quietly waiting for the Burial Sword Valley to open. Of course, there were quite a few eyes on Qin Zining, wanting to see what the proud girl who defeated Qinchong looked like. It's this woman who abolished Qinchong. Lu Qin Feng, the #1 genius of the Cold Sword sect, also the #1 swordsman in the eastern Song region, looked at Qin Zining and asked in a deep voice. Well, her deposed sword intent is indeed powerful. An elder of the Cold Sword sect nodded. Humph. Today I want to see how strong her deposed sword intent is, and whether she can survive under my sword. Lu Qinfeng immediately wanted to leave the warship. Since Qinchong was defeated, his reputation has also been affected. This made him hate Qin Zining very much. No. However, the master of Hanjian was cold. Why? Hearing this, Lu Qingfeng frowned puzzledly and said, she abolished Qinchong and made my Cold Sword sect lose face. Only by defeating her now can I regain face for my Cold Sword sect. You can challenge Qin Zining at any time, but definitely not now. The head of the Cold Sword sect said in a deep voice, the Burial Sword Valley is about to open, you must take out the Bibo sword this time, and you can't waste your energy now. The Bibo sword is the sword of an elder of the Cold Sword sect 7,000 years ago, but because of a violent conflict with the sect, he left the Cold Sword sect and traveled to the eternal ancient continent. When he returned, he was already in the void refining realm, and before he died, he buried Bibo's sword in the valley. For so many years, Han Jianzong has always wanted to take out the Bibo sword, but it has never been successful, because Bibo's sword, like its former master, hated Cold Sword sect deeply. But now, the Cold Sword sect has found the successor of the caster who once forged the Bibo sword, and finally has a way to forcibly control the Bibo sword by using the sect's skills. There must be no more failures. That's fine. Lu Qingfeng nodded and said, after I take out the Bibo sword, I will challenge Qin Zining. I will definitely kill her and avenge Qinchong. He didn't look at Qin Zining again, but looked in the direction of Burial Sword Valley. Boom boom. Not long after, accompanied by deafening noises and violent aura fluctuations, the Burial Sword Valley could be entered. For a while, people from many forces outside the Burial Sword Valley became excited. The Burial Sword Valley has opened, hurry up and go in. Seeing this, Mr. Chen said slowly, remember, you only have 3 hours, don't be greedy, just choose the one that suits you. He mainly said it to Qin Zining, because among these people, only Qin Zining is the most likely to draw a high-grade sword. Kindness. Qin Zining and the others all nodded. Afterwards, a group of 7 or 8 people walked towards the Burial Sword Valley. Qin Feng was also among them.